Hello and welcome to a jam-packed edition of Starside Chat. My name is Aaron. With me as always is Zach. How's it going, Zach?
Good. It's been a few weeks since we last recorded. I was on vacation, which was very fun, but when I went on vacation, a lot of things happened. So
it's true. We should dive into it. We should get to probably the biggest news item. I think you know what I'm talking about. Silksong is coming out on PlayStation 4 and 5.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that because our top news item is not a big news story, I would say.
This also is not a big news story, but for some reason, you texted me about this, and I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is a piece of news. But yeah, Silksong, the Sony Twitter account posted hey, Silksong's also coming out on PS4 and PS5, just FYI. We already knew it was coming out for PC and Switch and Xbox Game Pass, but I don't know what this means. It's all any Silksong news is good news, I guess, but it was just kind of weird timing to just be like, hey, just FYI, this is also happening. So I don't know what's going on with that, but yeah.
I mean, I guess they're just announcing that it's also coming to PlayStation, which
I guess
I think maybe we assumed would happen anyway.
Yeah, I thought so. I for a second thought it was going to be a console exclusive for a little bit on Switch, but that's, I guess, not the case. We learned that, I guess, when it was going to come out for Game Pass. But I guess it's just going to be everywhere all the time. Great for Steam Deck as well.
Oh, yeah, it would be a great Steam Deck game. I'm sure people love playing Hollow Knight on Steam Deck.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, anything that would be a great Switch game is now a great Steam Deck game.
It's true.
Speaking of which, I put a lot of time into games on my Steam Deck while I was on vacation. We'll get into that later because I've been playing a lot of things. So I'm looking forward to sort of talking about all the stuff I've been playing. We'll cover that, I guess, in the back half of the show. But also, we got the Ubisoft Forward, Nintendo Direct, and Sony State of Play to talk about.
Kind of a mini September E3. Yeah. I wish this had all been back in June so we could have all gotten it in one big chunk, but it's kind of like part 2 of E3.
Yeah, it was weird to suddenly get a random little dose of E3 in mid-September, but all right, I'll take it, I guess.
So a couple of times we saw 2 different press conferences. The Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope DLC is coming out. It's not just a DLC, it's a new game, but there also is going to be DLC and a season pass. And they revealed that Rayman is going to be a playable character.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about this, but
I have no thoughts on this.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's interesting that they're already talking about DLC before the game's even out, but I mean,
I was more talking about I don't really care about Rayman, but it is cool to see. I mean, I really liked the first Mario Rabbids game. I never played the Donkey Kong DLC. I just forgot that it happened.
Oh yeah.
But this game looks great. It looks like it's going to be super fun. They showed an elongated level where you're on this was in the Ubisoft Forward. They showed an elongated level where you're on a train. And I don't know really what the story of this one is, but it was a really interesting train battle where you had to basically knock this caterpillar, or it's called a wiggler. You knock a wiggler off of your train or whatever. So there was kind of you're getting rid of enemies, but also you're looking to the side to do a side objective. So I think they're going to really switch up the formula stage to stage, and you're going to be doing interesting. It's not just going to be a strategic battler. It's going to be interesting objectives in each round,
Yeah, I am looking forward to this game. It seems cool. I didn't play the first one. I have it, and I keep meaning to go back and play it.
It's great. You would love it. I think it's really fun.
I'm sure I would, but yeah, at this point, I may just wait for the new one and play that, and if I'm hungry for more, I'll go back and play the first one. It is coming out, I feel days before Persona 5 Royal hits the Switch and everything else. But
it's going to be a rough end of October because that's also right around the time that Bayonetta 3 comes out.
Yeah, and I forget when God of War Ragnarok is coming out, but I feel like it's all kind of clustered together. So
it's going to be rough. But here's something else I was thinking about.
But yeah.
we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but the next Zelda game, I keep wanting to call it the next Breath of the Wild game, but it's not that, is coming out next year, and also Silksong is probably coming out next year. So I don't know what's going to be my game of the year.
Yeah, I wonder if they also try to like clear a path for a sequel to Breath of the Wild, which we will
I don't know.
say the name of later because spoilers, that's what they announced.
We're teasing it to you.
Yeah, but I do wonder if we'll see some strategic delays heading into next year now that we also have a release date for sequel to Breath of the Wild. But
what's this Monster Hunter-like game?
So EA Originals has partnered with the Dynasty Warrior studio. They make those Musou-style games. It's like Koei Tecmo. For a new, supposedly Monster Hunter-like game set in like a fantasy version of feudal Japan. And they're saying it'll be like a AAA experience, but they haven't really said much more than that. Which I guess if you like Monster Hunter style games, I mean, it's cool that somebody else is sort of dipping their toes into that genre. My only thought would be just make it more accessible than what they're doing with Monster Hunter. That's all you really have to do. Make it so it's not so obtuse, and it'll be like a good way to get into that genre of game.
Yeah, it's definitely very intimidating trying to get into the Monster Hunter universe.
Yeah, even as someone who played Monster Hunter World and really liked that game, when Monster Hunter Rise came out, I was like, I don't even know if I can do this. It's such a hill to climb to like get back into those games that it was, I don't know, I couldn't do it. So I didn't, but yeah, so basically, I think all they have to do to make this compelling is to make like a much more streamlined and approachable version of that formula. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if that's necessarily what they want to do or what they're targeting, but it'll be interesting to see their take on it. Because this studio is known, we've talked about it previously with like Persona 5 Strikers and Fire Emblem Warriors. They're known for being able to take these existing franchises and sort of adapt them to their style of game. I don't know if they're planning on doing something like that, and they always do sort of make it a little bit more approachable than the original source material. So, so yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. People love Monster Hunter and that style of game, so maybe they'll have a new franchise to get into.
Well, speaking of new franchises, I guess this is not a good segue because this is an old franchise, but Cyberpunk. We both like Cyberpunk. We both enjoyed. I have not completed it yet, but there's been an update.
I thought you finished the main story.
No, I have not finished the main story.
Oh.
There's been a content drop update. They released some new stuff for the game, which I could get into now, and I probably will at some point restart up my playthrough. But they also unveiled the first and possibly only DLC for Cyberpunk 2077 called Phantom Liberty, which is coming out. I don't know that they gave a release date, but CD Projekt Red says they're committed. They're fully committed, totally and fully committed to further development of the Cyberpunk IP, including the anime which dropped this week. Did you start watching the anime?
I haven't yet. Have you?
No, I probably will start it at some point next week and probably burn all the way through it. I've heard it's very, very good. So I'm very excited to start it. But I'm waiting for a time when I have like an uninterrupted 4 hours when I can just go crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will definitely play this DLC. I'm going to get it. I still have it on Stadia. So whenever this drops, I'll pick it up for sure. And it'll be a great time. Do you think you'll dip back in?
Yeah, I think I might. I guess it depends on when it comes out, but I liked Cyberpunk 2077 quite a bit. And another interesting thing about it, I think they said that they're making it sort of like your save file is like cloud ready or backwards compatible.
Yes,
so like
it is. Yeah.
you can swap platforms as well, which is interesting to me since I think when this came out, I bought it on both PC and Stadia.
You did.
Because they like initially when it launched, it was like super terrible to try to play on pretty much every platform but Stadia. Yeah. And I initially bought it on PC and I was running into so many performance issues that I was like, and it was also like such a hot release that like the Steam servers basically like died. So you could not actually even download it. And so I was like, well, I want to play this and I want to be able to talk about it on the podcast. So I just went ahead and got it on Stadia so that I could play it right away. And I eventually swapped back to the PC version, and that's the version that I played all the way through. But it would be cool to be able to just have the option to hot swap back and forth between the two platforms. Yeah, for sure. So
I'm interested in it. I definitely will pick up this DLC. I'm just thinking about it right now. I believe I have zero memory of the game Babylon's Fall.
So this is that game that was, I feel like it was supposed to be sort of a game as service game that came out and was like super disappointing, and everybody like got horrible reviews and everybody was like, this is bad. And like not too long later, apparently it is already like they're terminating the game service. So this was like a complete disaster. I think this was
Square Enix.
Yeah, Square. It's a Square Enix thing, and it just flopped super hard. And so it seems like the end of this sort of bad idea, I guess, is maybe the only way to say it. I feel like we're going to see fewer and fewer of these game as service things just because of how many of them we've seen flop. But
it's so much to invest in something, and you're anticipating having a long tail, like a high return over many years. And it's just like, it's such a risk to take on, I feel like, especially with how many of these fail, like to put so much money up front and then to not get that return for like 0 people to play it, so much so that you have to stop the servers so you stop like bleeding money. I don't know, like, yeah, I think you're right. I think we're going to stop seeing it more frequently.
Well, especially since there are so many other things that you can do to be profitable. It was like Bungie came along and created this space and like was the only one that was super successful at doing it. And everyone, like, for years, maybe they had developed these plans to like start doing a similar thing. And I guess like MMOs have been around for a long time. So that's like another thing that people are always eyeing, like, oh, we could have this game that runs for like 10 years and is like, you know, instead of like you ramp up and you make something for a few years and then it's out and you have to like try to find the next project. They were just like, we'll just have this cash cow that will sustain us for years on end. And so they've put these things into development, and now like they're coming out and we're realizing how hard it is to actually succeed in that space. So I feel like as they stop, you know, once they get released, I think those studios are going to move on to different projects and they're not going to try to do this again. Yeah.
Yakuza. I guess we can't call it that anymore.
Yeah.
But Sega has announced 3 new Yakuza games, but now they're just called Like a Dragon games.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that.
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, maybe it's slowly getting away from the concept of being a Yakuza. I mean, I didn't finish Yakuza Like a Dragon, but by the end of that game, I would assume he's not really in the Yakuza anymore.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I know, like, they also did, like, a spinoff that was, like, the Lost Judgment thing. Mm-hmm. So it's like they already sort of had a spinoff. I guess maybe they're just... Yeah, maybe they are just getting away from the whole Yakuza thing.
Like a Dragon 8 is coming out, and I guess it's going to have dual protagonists. It's going to have Ichiban from... number 7, and then a previous one from previous games that people are into.
Yeah. So Kiryu is the sort of main protagonist of all the other Yakuza games, and now you have a new one in Ichiban Kasuga. He was the you can't even say it. He was the protagonist of Like a Dragon, but that's now the name of the overall franchise. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little confusing. And then they also had it was Like a Dragon Ishin,
Yeah, which is in the past.
which is set in the past, which they showed that I was like, wait, is this connected to that Yakuza thing? Because it has the same name but different subtitle, and it doesn't look like it's, a spinoff of Yakuza because it's all like modern day, but so that was confusing to me. And then they have another game, Like a Dragon Gaiden. Not sure what's going on with that one.
But I admitted that. I mean, I never finished Like a Dragon.
It was very good.
7.
Very, very good.
I think I got to the part where you had to start grinding, and I sort of fell off of it. Like I got to a battle that I played 3 times and I could not beat. And I think we talked about it, and you were like, "Oh yeah, you have to grind before you can do that battle." And I was like, "I'm interested in that, but I also have other things to do."
Well, they did make it relatively easy to do that grinding, because like once you get to that spot where you're like, okay, I'm realizing now that I definitely need to grind for level for a little while before trying to take on the next like big story beat. Mm-hmm. It's kind of accommodating, because it's like, oh, also here's this like little like tower gym thing that you can sort of battle your way through like multiple levels of enemies, and you'll get like tons of experience points for doing it. It still takes a while because it is a grind where you have to like level your characters up, and I kind of did like a Google search of like what's the recommended level for like whatever chapter was ahead. So you can kind of find what level you should target, and then you just like grind there for a while. But it is kind of a little bit of a bummer that you kind of have to stop progressing the story just to like spend time grinding. But that's sort of a JRPG staple, I guess.
Too true. A couple of games. I'm speeding through all this because I want to get to the meat of this. Yeah. But a couple of games have come out. I don't think we're really going to play any of them, but Splatoon 3 is out. Disney Dreamlight Valley.
Interesting thing about Splatoon 3 is it is the biggest launch for any Switch game ever in Japan.
Really?
Yeah, which was a surprising bit of news, because you would think, Animal Crossing or like Mario or Zelda or something like that would have done better, but nope, this is the biggest one. They made that announcement. And I've been a little bit tempted to try it just because everybody talks so glowingly about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know, we'll see. Disney Dreamlight Valley is just an Animal Crossing with Disney characters.
Yeah, some great TikToks I've seen of people like trying to do missions in that, and Goofy just like being insane in the background. So but other than that, I'm not super interested in it. Right
now, it's in like a paid, like beta sort of pre-launch form.
I thought it was free to play.
It will be free to play when it officially launches next year. You can play it on Game Pass, so that's sort of how you would maybe get free access to it. But for now, it's in like a sort of pre-launch, like paid version of it. Where if you wanted to play it on Steam anyway, you would have to buy it. But I mean, the reviews have been mostly people saying, I'm surprisingly enjoying this. So, I mean, maybe people were not expecting to like it, and they now do like it. So I don't know. Either way, I have actually started playing Steelrising, which is the third sort of 4 games that have released within the last couple of weeks. This is that game that was made by the developer of, oh gosh, I'm going to forget the name of it. It starts with a G. What is that game? Greedfall. So the developer of Greedfall, I don't know if you remember that game, made this game, and it's basically a Souls-like game set in.
You're like a mannequin.
You're an automaton, and it's set in sort of. What is the period for this? It's not.
It's like French Revolution, maybe.
Yeah, French Revolution. I was gonna say it's not Victorian, so French Revolution, and you're talking to some notable people from history, and somebody has unleashed like all these automatons everywhere, and they're like wreaking havoc, and it's very dangerous for like the queen or whatever. And you play this automaton that was like a dancer, but I guess you're also sort of an AI, maybe.
Interesting.
And so basically you're going and doing like what she is asking you to do, and you're like seeking out these different people, and it is pretty linear. It's not like an open world sort of Elden Ring type of a thing, but it's very, very Souls-like. And I've been enjoying it so far. The reviews are fairly middling, like it's like sort of getting 6s and 7s, which is to say that it is not as good as Elden Ring, obviously, which I don't think is a surprise to anyone.
Yeah.
But I watched the IGN review, and it just sounded like the reviewer was kind of growing tired of these Souls-likes. Yeah, they're just like, we've seen a lot of these. I don't really care about another one. But if you're like me and your introduction to Souls-like games was Elden Ring, like I'm not burnt out on them. So
yeah,
fine for me. I'm playing it and having a fine time with it. But I don't know that the bosses that I've experienced so far are anything to write home about, which is maybe worth saying. But also that just means that I'm not like getting hung up on really tough bosses and can't progress. So double-edged sword. So far I'm enjoying it, but we'll see like how I feel by the end of it. And then the last game that I guess is out now, I no fanfare whatsoever. Last of Us Remake, Part 1. This is out now. This was a thing that I didn't think needed to exist, but I guess it does.
I think it was like Jason Schreier or somebody, the day it came out, tweeted like, I think it's been enough time. We need another remake of Last of Us Part 1. As just kind of like a joke, because this game has been remade like 4 times at this point. It's only like 10 years old or something.
Yeah, like it was re-released multiple times at this point. And the only thing that I've seen about it, sort of justifying why it needs to exist, is that they've got the TV show coming up, but they didn't time the release at all. So it's just like separate to that. And so they're like, well, so, you know, you got your people that are not like big gamers, but they're going to watch this show and be like, oh, this is based on a game. I do have a console. I should go play it. And then if they dive into the previous release of Last of Us, it's going to feel like a little bit old and janky, maybe. So they're, and if they want to play both Part 1 and Part 2, there's a pretty big disparity between how the two sort of look and feel. And so they're just like, well, let's remake Part 1 and bring all the like UI elements and the controls and all of that up to where Last of Us Part 2 is. But now we'll just have like sort of the definitive, you know, Part 1 and Part 2, sort of like Mass Effect Legendary Edition style, where they sort of try to bring the first game up to the standard of the other games, basically.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you think so? Almost definitely, Naughty Dog is making a Last of Us Part 3, a final part of it, based on the ending of Last of Us Part 2. How much of the first game do you think this season of television is going to be? Do you think it's going to be a whole part? Do you think like season 1 is going to be all of Last of Us Part 1, and then season 2 is going to be all of Last of Us Part 2, and then they're banking on Last of Us Part 3 coming out? Or, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, that's the question, because I feel like I don't know, TV shows like the first Game of Thrones, like the first season of Game of Thrones. I don't know if that covered the entirety of the first book. So like, how do you approach a TV show based on a game?
I don't know. There's a lot of like parts in the Last of Us Part 1 story. I feel like that would be a good cutting off like season finale type time. Specifically like when he gets hurt and then there's kind of like the fade to black and then it comes up and it's now wintertime and she's hunting and whatnot. I feel like that is a good place to cut it. Like that could be season 1 finale, and then season 2 is her being,
everything
out in the
beyond
wild.
that point.
So I could see them splitting it up into 2 seasons, but I could also see them being like, no, let's just do it all, and then we recast Ellie for.
Well, do you know how many
2.
episodes it's going to be?
I don't. It's probably going to be like, I would guess 10 or 8.
Yeah. So they could easily stretch it out to 2 seasons, or they could just cram everything into 1.
I mean, here's the other thing. Do you think we get a time jump, or do you think it goes seamlessly into the second game? Like, do they stretch it out to the point where they live in the village or the town for a while? Like, do we see the interim in between? Or do you think there is a point where one season ends and then the next season is like, 5 years later or whatever, and they've recast the actress and Pedro Pascal's looking pretty gray, and it starts up with Last of Us Part 2?
I feel like there will be the time jump, and maybe they just like put some more gray in what's his name's hair, and then just call it good.
It's an interesting question. I'm very curious to see. I mean, Last of Us Part 1 is a great game, but it's also like very gut-wrenching at times.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have no desire whatsoever to revisit this universe. That's why I didn't play the second game. So like, if this show was exactly everything that was in Last of Us, but it wasn't called Last of Us, it was just like a show that was about like people living in a post-apocalypse, I wouldn't watch it. So it doesn't make any difference to me that it's The Last of Us, the TV show. Like, I probably won't watch it.
We'll see. I'm going to start to watch it and check it out, but if it does get to be too much of a bummer, I'll probably stop. I'll report back 100% when I do.
It's a bummer. You know what this game is.
I don't know. I mean, they might change some stuff. They might. They have said it's going to depart from the games in some way.
Oh, really?
So, okay. I don't know what that means. Or there's the huge twist at the end of the first one, and I can't imagine they're going to change that. But if they found an interesting way to change that, then I don't know. That's maybe worth checking out. But I don't know. I'll watch and I'll report back.
Okay. Yeah, let me know if it's something I should bother watching. But
well, let's dive into this E3 Part 2, because there's basically three shows that happened. Let's start off with the Ubisoft one, because that's the least interesting one. You didn't watch this one.
I did not. I was on vacation.
The Mario Rabbids thing was probably the most interesting thing. That's the part where they showed the elongated train battle, which is cool to watch. They had some other random stuff that nobody cares about, like Let's Dance or whatever, or Just Dance, whatever it is. But
Let's Just Dance.
The real centerpiece of this show was all of the Assassin's Creed stuff, and boy, was there a lot. I think they announced like 5 Assassin's Creed games. There is...
My gosh.
The first one we talked about is Assassin's Creed Mirage, and that is a throwback to classic Assassin's Creed. They've like... No longer will it be like a very dense RPG with a ton of like things you're upgrading. This is back to basics, very similar to the first Assassin's Creed. I think you play as Basim, who is, I guess, a character in one of the Assassin's Creed games. I've only played the first Assassin's Creed. But
I've only played the first 2.
This is in some old time place like Jerusalem. I didn't super care about this, but the more interesting thing they talked about. Let me get this right. Okay, so there is going to be an Assassin's Creed Netflix series, which is happening. Okay, this is the big thing. Assassin's Creed Infinity, which is not a game. It's a platform, a hub, basically, that you load into. I think it's very similar to a launcher, but it's maybe playable in some way. But that's basically how all future Assassin's Creed games are going to be accessible. It's some sort of like probably fake Animus that you get into or something. But within that, there's a couple different Assassin's Creed games that are coming to Infinity, including Assassin's Creed Hex, which is, I believe, takes place in like those same witch trials and has to do with like witchcraft, which looks weird and scary. Assassin's Creed Jade, which is going to take place in China, and you can like run on the Great Wall of China and stuff. And then Assassin's Creed codename Red, which is where you're in Japan and you live the life of a shinobi. All of these are Assassin's Creed games.
That's the most interesting one to me.
It's all Assassin's Creed. And unfortunately, the way they couched all this was with some guy who I guess was a voice actor in one of the Assassin's Creed games, who I found to be very annoying because he was really hamming it up during the thing. This is another thing where I had to like mute whenever there wasn't gameplay. But Assassin's Creed, it's everywhere now. They've exploded. They're really cashing in their chip, and it's now just going to be every year there's going to be a new Assassin's Creed thing. There's also like a final DLC for Valhalla, which has gotten so many DLCs. But
yeah, it was weird that they like there for a long time. It was an annualized series, and then they were like, "All right, this is too much, and we need to back off a little bit." So they're like, "All right, we're not going to do it every year. We're going to slow down the pace a little bit." And now all of a sudden they're like, No, that was a mistake. We should always have Assassin's Creed all the time.
Multiple studios working on multiple Assassin's Creed games coming out, sometimes concurrently. Also, there's a Netflix show. So
yeah, which, I mean, I guess it's popular enough for that, but like,
yeah,
for you and me who have not been into it for a long time, like, this is not doing anything for me. And like Infinity, like you said, seems more like a launcher, which it sounds like
it's a platform. They called it.
I feel like they did that with like Battlefield and Hitman, where they were like, we're just gonna make it so that you launch this thing and you can access all the previous content.
It's similar to what Minecraft did, where like now there's just one Minecraft launcher and it's everything. That's where you get like Java Edition, Bedrock Edition, that weird like Diablo-like game that they did, Legends. It's all going to be in just the Minecraft launcher.
Yeah, they did the same with Battlefield, where like you launched this thing and it was like, do you want to access, maybe you want to play, Battlefield 4, or maybe you want to play, a more recent Battlefield or something like that. They just made it so that you basically had this hub where you could play whatever previous game you wanted or whatever the most recent one is. But I guess that makes sense.
I don't know. Zach, tell me all about the Nintendo Direct.
Well, I mean, we can start off with the most interesting thing, maybe, because they announced a lot of stuff.
It's true.
It was a very cool show, and I feel like they, at least for me, they had a good opener, something I wanted to see. And they had a big closer, which is the big news. But they had some like cool stuff interspersed in the middle. There was a graphic that somebody shared that I was going to reference to be able to like talk about everything that they showed, because it was so much stuff. So it
was 45 minutes about.
Yeah, it was way bigger than anything they've shown previously this year. It was just like a huge dump of stuff. And so they had Zelda, they had Pikmin 4, they had a new Fire Emblem, they had a new Kirby, or not a new Kirby, but a remaster of an old Kirby. They had like a new Bayonetta 3 trailer, Mario and Rabbids, and they had some cool stuff coming for Nintendo Online that I was actually fairly excited about. So, I mean, I guess we can start with, just to get it out of the way, let's talk about Zelda.
Which Zelda are you talking about?
I mean, Tears of the Kingdom or Tears of the Kingdom?
It's Tears. They've confirmed that it is Tears, in fact.
Everybody was making the joke, Legend of Zelda Tears for Fears.
I heard, the guy I watched, as I usually do with something big like this, I'll watch the main feed of it. And then for the big announcements, I usually will watch like 3 other people watch it. I'll go back and like watch the MinMax guys watch it and some other people. And one of the guys I watched who's very into Zelda, he and his, I guess, friends have been calling it Breath of the Skyled, which I think is a better name. But Tears of the Kingdom is fine. I feel like it doesn't roll off your tongue like Breath of the Wild does.
No, it does not.
But we'll get used to it, I guess.
Yeah, and I heard somebody talking about it, and they were saying, well, maybe it's like some sort of element for like in the title for each of the games. So like Breath of the Wild, like breath was wind or whatever, and Tears of the Kingdom may be like associated with like rain or something like that, and maybe it's interesting. Like, and maybe the next one will be something else like that. Maybe it'll be like so it'll be like a trilogy of some sort. But
it's interesting.
So yeah, I thought that was an interesting theory. I don't know if that holds any water, but
lots to talk about. It is, unfortunately, they only gave us 30 seconds, which is a bummer, but they did give us the name. A lot of small details stand out in this. Even though it is only 30 seconds, it's densely packed. I'm waiting for the upcoming Game Explain super analysis video of it, but even before watching that, there's a couple things you can point out. He does seem to have some sort of thing on his hip that is maybe like a marker of using magical ability. It's like these little green like spheres or like bottles perhaps that are like, it's on his hip. I don't know what that really means. There's also in the background you can see a dragon. So a lot to unpack. I'm very much looking forward to some analysis videos of this, but what was your overall take? Do you like the name?
I mean, I guess, like you said, it's not as it doesn't roll off the tongue quite the way Breath of the Wild did.
Yeah.
I'm very curious. It definitely seems more like there's more verticality to it. He does ride on this like weird thing, and it's not a real bird, but like, you know,
it's
one
like
of
stone
those
bird. Yeah.
Yeah, and which made me think of what were they called in Breath of the Wild? Those big machine things that were basically the dungeons that you did.
Yeah, the Guardians.
I was like, maybe it's like somehow associated with them since it's this like big, like flying thing. But
something else to point out: there was like a mural in the first part of the trailer that had like 7 things around it, like orbs or teardrops, perhaps. So people are speculating that there's going to be 7 dungeons in this, which that was like one of the complaints of the first one, was not enough dungeons. So maybe they're shifting gears and it's going to be less shrines, more dungeons type of a thing.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, I don't even know how you handle the shrines, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
Something happened and you have to go through them again. But they're different.
But they're different, yeah. I mean, I'm into that. I love the shrines.
Yeah, the shrines
I would be
were
totally
great.
Fine. Even if they were just like, we don't know why this happened, I would be totally fine with that.
Yeah, which they probably will. It'll just be like, do shrines. We're not giving you a reason why you have to do them again, even though you already did them in this area. You must do these shrines. Yeah, please do these shrines. So yeah, I don't know from a story perspective what's going on, but I'm very excited to play this. They did also announce the release date for May 12th, 2023. So I wonder how many games will get shifted around to try to avoid it.
I don't know. Yeah, you don't want to be on that weekend.
For sure. You want to take time off that weekend is what you want to do. Yeah. So not much that we can take away from it. I mean, I'm sure people will release like hour-long like deep dives, like explaining every single thing. But
soon enough, I'm very excited to watch those.
But yeah, very cool. The next thing I was interested in was Fire Emblem Engage, which is, you know, just a new Fire Emblem game. I liked Three Houses quite a bit, so I probably will play this when it comes out. I don't think they gave an official release date. They just said 2023. People were saying the main character of it looked like a VTuber, which is not something I thought about, but
bold hairstyle, basically the Switch of hairstyles.
Oh yeah. Maybe they're gonna key into that for a special release of the Switch.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they are.
Yeah. And then they, what else? So they had like some games like It Takes Two and what was another one? Games that are getting like re-releases on
Tunic.
Switch. Yeah, Tunic was one, and Sifu I think was the other one.
Oh
and
yeah, Sifu. I forgot about that.
they look kind of rough.
They do, yeah. Definitely like a Vaseline filter on the lens.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it's cool that they're going to be available on Switch, but I don't think necessarily the ideal place to play them.
Not the best place.
The Switch, because you can just pass a Joy-Con, maybe It Takes Two would be a cool thing, but it's definitely not going to look great.
Speaking of things that probably won't look great, they announced a bunch of Resident Evil stuff that's coming cloud version.
Yeah.
So, like, the most recent one, and also, what was the most recent one? Was it Village?
Yeah, it was Village.
And then the previous one, what was the previous one where you were in the house with all those crazy people?
That was... Oh, gosh. What was the name of that?
Was it just called Resident Evil?
It was Biohazard is what it was.
Was it Biohazard? Anyway, a bunch of Resident Evil stuff, but it's all cloud-based, so it's probably not going to look great. A bunch of other random things. A SpongeBob game. A lot of farming games. People were like, oh, there's a lot of farming games in this direct.
Yeah, if you're a big fan of...
Story Seasons.
If you're a big fan of Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley, this was like the show for you.
But also Octopath Traveler 2, which is coming out February 24th. That's a pretty big deal.
Yep, that was a big one.
Factorio is coming out as well. I love Factorio.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was a big one for you. Yeah, for sure. And Miyamoto popped up. Walk us through Miyamoto's appearance.
He appeared, and he was like, hey, it's me, Miyamoto. I'm hard at work, working on the Mario movie with Chris San. And then I was anticipating him to be like, well, here's some footage of it.
Yeah, that's what I think everyone was expecting.
Then he took a pause and he was like, let's talk about Pikmin. Isn't Pikmin great? Pikmin Bloom is so cool. Let's talk about how to play Pikmin if you haven't already.
I think this is desperation. Somebody please play Pikmin Bloom.
So, and then he was like, also, guess what? Take a look at this. And it's Pikmin 4. And then he had a little Pikmin t-shirt on. So
I think this was a little bit of a kind of a, like, almost trying to fake people out. Like, let's we know people are excited about Pikmin 4, so let's talk Pikmin. Oh, but we're going to talk about Pikmin Bloom.
Yeah.
And then, like, he's like, okay, that's all for me now. And then it was like, no, but we do have Pikmin Blue. Just kidding. It really is here. We're going to actually show it.
It's interesting. They didn't really show any gameplay. But I have heard a criticism of previous Pikmin games is that they're on a, like, time system. So, like, it's not... So you can't really, like, chill out in a Pikmin game because you're always watching the clock. Very similar to that... Man, what was that old zombie game I don't remember the name of where you were in a mall? There was a zombie game where you were like a photojournalist in a mall. That was a very fun playground, but also it was on a clock. So like you had to do things by a certain time or things just like doors closed on you basically.
That's why I never played those games. It's because I didn't want to deal with the clock.
My prediction is that this one will not have a clock. I think they've realized it in this new age where they're streamlining things and making things much more playable. Like, for instance, like playing Mario Odyssey is great, but going back to play like even critically lauded Mario games that aren't Mario Odyssey, you can see that they really figured it out with Odyssey. Like there's a lot of like quality of life things. I mean, even in Mario 64, which is a classic, when you get a star, you get kicked out of the world. And like, that's fine or whatever. But Odyssey is just like so easy and fun to play. You're just constantly getting stars. There's not really any obstacles. I would bet that they've taken those things and adapted them for Pikmin, and it will be a much more enjoyable game to play. It's not going to have a ticking clock, and it's just going to be, it's going to be good. I think I probably will check this out depending on what the gameplay is, but I'm interested in it, even though I've never played a Pikmin game before.
Yeah, I am a little bit as well, and some of that is because one of the games I played while I was on vacation was that Tinykin game.
Yes, I've heard that's very good.
It is very good, so not to spoil what I'm going to talk about at the end of the show, but it's very good, and there is no clock, and it is all about just like exploration and like collecting stuff and using, you know, the Tinykin to help you like get around the world and maybe like solve some puzzles. They're not necessarily puzzles, but kind of that way. And so I would definitely like, I'm more receptive to like a Pikmin style game, having played it, than maybe I was previously. So plus like people do love the franchise. So I don't know, maybe 2023 is the time to finally check it out.
They did a brief trailer for Bayonetta 3, and you have to go onto the YouTube channel to get like a more in-depth thing. But man, I went onto the YouTube channel to watch the like 6-minute Bayonetta 3 breakdown. This game looks awesome. It looks so fun. I'm very excited for it. It's coming out October 28th. I will definitely be picking it up, and I will give my review on the cast. But everything about it looks like they're just nailing it. It's going to be very, very good.
I'm realizing, so October 28th, that's just an additional game.
Yeah.
For the end of October this year.
True.
It's going to be insane. I don't know. It's going to hit the wallet pretty hard, and you're just going to have no time.
It's true. It's going to be dense.
But yeah, so the Nintendo Online stuff I thought was cool as well. So they said, I don't remember which ones were targeting 2022 and which ones were coming out in 2023, but they said Pilot Wings 64, Mario Party 1, 2, and 3 are all coming out, and Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Stadium 2, 1080 Snowboarding, Excitebike 64, and the big title, GoldenEye, finally being added to Nintendo Online.
With online play.
Online play. Now, the weird thing about this, because, like, it's some, like, really weird, bizarre, like, rights thing where the game was developed by Rare, which is now owned by Microsoft.
Correct,
and it's, like, a movie franchise that's owned by some other company. And the rights to the video games have like traded hands between EA and Activision is now owned by Microsoft. So like, but the GoldenEye, when it came out, was a Nintendo exclusive. So you have this like really bizarre rights situation, which is why it maybe has not come out or been remastered previously. But so yeah, you get a not really remastered version. It's just GoldenEye 64 on Nintendo Online, but with online play. However, Xbox is going to get a remastered version that will run in 16:9 for Game Pass, and it will not have multiplayer, but it will run in 4K. So, yes. And I think also importantly, will have dual stick support, which I do not know that that's coming to the original GoldenEye that's going to be on Nintendo Online.
Interesting.
So like you get not an ideal version of either. So you would probably like to have the Xbox 4K version that's been remastered that has dual stick support with the online play, but you're not going to get it. You're just getting the campaign. And you would probably also like to have it on the Switch where you can play online, but whatever.
It's weird. And also, I mean, there are other games that kind of fill this gap. I think we talked about, I don't remember where this was shown, but at some point during the first part of E3 back in June, they released they showed the first trailer for a game called Agent 64, or I think it was called Agent 64, yeah. Which is like a fake version of GoldenEye, which looks great. But for this nostalgia, it's such a weird rights issue because it was a movie and then Rare changed hands and all that stuff. So who knows? But it's something
cool
I'll probably
that
check out.
Coming. Yeah, it's cool that it's coming. I probably will try it out and see how it goes. I do have concerns that like going back to it, you'll realize, you know, how it doesn't hold up the way you think it does. Also, my concern is how will it play with a Pro controller as opposed to like
Great
the
question.
original 64 controller?
Yeah.
I still would like to pick up one of those wireless Nintendo 64 controllers that you can buy on Nintendo's website, but they're continuously sold out. So it's impossible to get them. But maybe that would be the ideal way to play GoldenEye on Nintendo Online, but can't get them. It's impossible.
Were there any other? They're going to unveil, or they're releasing that Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion on December 13th.
Yeah. Do I need to play that?
I don't know. I'm not really sure.
My Final Fantasy VII Remake tour.
I don't know. I never played Crisis Core, and it has to do heavily with the character of Zack, who is like Cloud with black hair, who I don't know anything about. But it seems like he's going to feature heavily in the new remakes. So
yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
making me think maybe I should play it, but maybe the Switch might not be the place to play it.
I don't know. Yeah, probably not. You know where you could play it is PlayStation. Are we ready to talk about the state of play?
Yeah, I'm trying to run through this and see if there was anything else I wanted to mention in the Direct. I did think it was cool that they were doing a remaster of Tales of Symphonia, which is like this beloved classic on the GameCube. So the fact that that's coming back is cool. People were excited about that. The first Tales game I ever played was Tales of Arise last year, and it was like my game of the year. So it'll be cool maybe to go back and revisit that, but it is coming early 2023, so I'm not sure like what that's going to come up against as far as releases go. But that's something to have on your radar. Yeah, so we can move to State of Play.
State of Play, Tekken 8.
Have you played the Tekken games?
No.
I was going to say...
No, I don't know anything about them.
When I was in maybe middle school, I had a friend who had a Tekken game, and I played very little with him, and there was a character called King who's basically like got a tiger for a head or like a jaguar, or I don't know what it was, but that's all my only experience with Tekken, and that's all I remember. But I'm not a big fighting game person.
Nor am I. Star Wars Tales from Galaxy's Edge was a PSVR 2. They did a couple of PSVR 2 titles. This one seems interesting. Demio seems very interesting to me. It's a tabletop style, like almost Dungeons and Dragons style game where you're moving pieces around on a dungeon. I always thought this is a great use case for VR, is having a crazy animated play space in front of you that you can all interact with.
Yeah.
So this looks interesting to me, although I don't super like the art style.
Yeah.
Then they talked about that Like a Dragon Ishin, which is interesting. Hogwarts Legacy is a bummer to think about. It's like not really relevant to anybody, I think.
You say that, but my sister, who is not a huge gamer, but she does like play games now and then, like this is maybe the one game other than Breath of the Wild or the sequel to Breath of the Wild that's on her radar. Yeah, so like if you got Harry Potter fans, they know about this and they're waiting for it. So,
and then Pacific Drive was interesting. It's like, I remember, I don't remember the name of it, but there was a game years ago where I think you were only ever in a car, and it was like nighttime, and it was very scary. It was supposed to be like a horror survival game, but you were in a car, and I think you were being chased by another car. So I got vibes of that. I don't remember what that's called. But this is a very interesting game where it seems like there's weird sci-fi natural disasters happening around you, and you're just like tasked with, you're in a car and you're trying to escape or get somewhere safe. But this piqued my interest a little bit. I was a little interested. What did you think about this? Pacific Drive is what it's called.
I have no recollection of this, so I'm gonna have to watch a trailer. But
it's interesting. It's not. It seems somewhat unique. Sin Duality was just like a weird mech game.
It was like a mech sort of tactics like game. I think maybe if I recall correctly.
Stellar Blade, I don't recall.
Stellar Blade, I thought this was one of the ones that looked kind of cool. I think the last three that they had to show seemed kind of cool to me, but maybe I'm misremembering.
Is this the one where everybody was like a robot on the back part of their head?
Like in the Matrix? Where they had
a
little...
Their front part was a human, and then you would like track around to the back of their body, and they had like robot parts?
I don't think so. I'm watching the trailer now, and this looks like kind of a cool like action hack and slash, almost not really Bayonetta style, but like I don't know how you would explain it. Like you're playing as this sort of anime girl looking character, and she's got like this weird
Yeah, this is the robots one with like an old man. Yeah, it's like an old man, and then you look behind, and he like doesn't have the back half of his skull because he's like a robot.
I do not remember that part. Either way, I thought this kind of looked cool a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
it's like Korean or something, right?
Yeah, maybe. I just remember watching the MinMax guys talk over the release, and they were like, "Make your title legible with your font," because like they could not read the fact that it was saying Stellar Blade, because Stellar is written in this weird like cursive, and it is not really legible if you don't know what you're looking at.
It's a very beautiful game. Like the graphics are crazy.
Yeah, the graphics look really, really cool, and it could be like a really fun like combat style.
Mm-hmm. And then Rise of Ronin was very interesting to me.
Yeah, I was also very into this. So it's Team Ninja, which I feel like is a name that I should remember what they've made.
Yeah, they made what did Team Ninja make? Not Ninja Gaiden, did they?
They did.
Oh, they did Neo.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they did the Neo games, which people really like. That's like one of the Souls like.
And they did do Ninja Gaiden
games that people actually do like. Yeah, and they've done like the Dead or Alive games. I knew I recognized the name of this developer, but I don't think I've played many of their games. I guess they're like the publisher of like Fire Emblem Warriors, but they didn't develop it. And then they did that Stranger of Paradise game that came out earlier this year, and I think they're also publishing that Wulong Fallen Dynasty game,
which you're going to check out.
There is a demo available right now on PS5 that I do want to play, and maybe we'll talk about that on next week's podcast. But yeah, this looked cool to me. Rise of the Ronin. I'm into like that type of game, obviously, like the sort of feudal Japan game, but it seemed crazy as well, because like at one point he like jumps off a roof and has this sort of wingsuit type of a thing, where he's like hovering. But yeah, the combat also seemed cool, because at one point he also has this like this rifle with like a bayonet on the end, and he's like using it like a sword to like hack and slash a guy, but then he like stabs him and also shoots him, which is crazy. So it seems like a cool game. I'm into it.
Let's talk about God of War Ragnarok, coming out November 11th, a mere week or so, maybe 2 weeks after Bayonetta 3.
And Persona 5 Royal.
Yeah.
And Mario and Rabbids. I hope that you're able to play through the entirety of Persona 5 Royal before this comes out. I don't think you will.
Yeah.
No, this trailer looked awesome. It got me
great.
really hyped for it. This was a very cool trailer. I watched it like 3 times in a row. What'd you think of this?
I'm into it. I like it a lot. I probably will play it on PS4, because it is coming out on PS4 as well as PS5. Yeah. And I do not have a PS5 yet, but I was very, very into this. It looks great. The voice acting is great. Kratos, who's played by Christopher Judge, who is Teal'c on Stargate, is nailing it. He's got the great, like, a lot of gravitas.
Yeah. I love the part where he was like, "Death can have me when it earns me." That was just such an awesome line to have in the trailer.
I said this movie because it almost is a movie, but this game is going to be amazing. There's no way it isn't going to be amazing.
You think they're still doing the one shot?
Like, oh yeah, 1,000%. It's become iconic at this point. Yeah. I'm interested to see. It was such a great spoilers for first God of War, but at this point, what are you doing if you haven't played it? But there was such a great part in God of War, the first one, where you went and got like the Blades of Chaos, and all of a sudden you had 2 weapons. And I have to imagine that they're going to have a similar thing. There's got to be more weapons in this, I would think.
I wondered about that.
But I'll be interested to see like what else they add. Because a great thing about old God of War games was getting a new weapon that was all crazy and you could start to max out. Like, I remember in the one for PS3, you fought Hercules at one point, and Hercules' weapon was just like 2 giant metal gauntlets that were just the faces of tigers, or lions rather. And then you killed Hercules horrifically, and you got his hands. So you got these like big metal lions that you could just punch people with, and it was awesome. And like there was like giant axes and scythes and things you could get. And I really loved the combat in the first God of War, but I would be interested to see him use different weapons. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be cool, because I'm sure they've come up with different ways to like sort of evolve the gameplay from the last game, so it's not just axe and Blades of Chaos the whole way through. But from a story perspective, this seems very cool as well. There's not a lot I know about Norse mythology, but like the part where he fires the arrow up into the sky and like one of the wolves goes flying up and like chases the like sun away and it becomes nighttime. Like that was such a cool visual thing. Like I'm looking forward to just how big this is like visually.
I would guess Ragnarok is the end of the world. That much I know to be true. So I mean, I would imagine it's going to get pretty epic. We haven't seen something. I mean, the wolf is very cool to look at. It's very big, but that first one had that giant world eater serpent that was always just like watching you from the side of the screen.
It was a cool thing to see.
They're great at playing with scale, and I feel like we're going to get some more great stuff about that. And I have a big TV now, so I can finally take advantage of that. I'm very excited that this is a hotly anticipated game. Probably my most anticipated game of this year.
Well, yeah,
Starfield's coming out next year, right?
Yeah, Starfield's next year. This, like, now that Starfield has exited 2022, like, far and away, this is the biggest game releasing this fall, at least in my mind.
When is the Game Awards? Is it in November or December? It's in December. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be Game of the Year.
No. Elden Ring.
Oh, I forgot about Elden Ring.
Will 100% still be Game of the Year. But
probably.
This, like I've been saying, this if they really stick the landing with this one, it could maybe compete with it for some people. But
I don't know. There will also be recency bias.
Yeah, there will be recency bias, but I still feel like in the end it's going to go to Elden Ring. Just thinking back on what a huge thing it was.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it was giant.
It was. It's hard to remember a time when it was just like it was flooding your social and like your YouTube feed and
TikTok as well.
Twitch
so many saved TikToks from back when I was playing Elden Ring of just like, here's how to get this crazy weapon. Like it was everywhere.
It was so ubiquitous. Like God of War, I don't think will hit on that scale. Like it'll still be a huge release for like PlayStation and all of that, but like it's not coming to like Steam, so like you do have to have a PlayStation for it. So it is like maybe potentially a little bit held back by just being on one platform, but I think Elden Ring was such a cultural moment when it released, and it will widely still be considered maybe the best game of the generation. And God of War Ragnarok looks great, but I don't know if in the end people will still be calling it that. I feel like it's a little bit of a Red Dead Redemption 2 versus God of War that year when both of those games came out. And it was like, which one is more game of the generation? Like, I don't know.
I want to talk about your travels, Zach. I want to talk about your Steam Deck adventures.
Yeah, so I went on vacation and I debated, do I want to take my Switch? Do I want to take my Steam Deck? Do I want to take both? And I was like, no, I'm just taking one and it's going to be the Steam Deck. And so I downloaded several games and I was like, I'm good to go. And so the game that I really got into while I was playing on the Steam Deck on vacation was Grime. which is a game I started last year, and we talked very briefly about it last year. If you've never played Grime, you should, especially if you're waiting, like hotly anticipating Silksong.
Oh, I am.
Grime is a Souls-like Metroidvania, and I love it. I beat it while I was on vacation, and it's got like some challenging bosses, but I couldn't get enough of it. It's so good. And you're like constantly, you know, getting new weapons, and it handles weapons exactly the same way it does in like a Soulsborne game, where like you have your different attributes that you're able to level up, and so your weapons are sort of like there's sort of an attribute requirement to equip it and use it, and then it like will scale based on like one of your attributes. So it's handled exactly the same way. And so for me, having come off of, within the last year, having played Metroid Dread and Elden Ring, this was like a really good follow-up. Mm-hmm. And much like with those games, you'll come up against a boss and you'll be like, man, this thing destroyed me, and I'm going to have to like try it again until I like figure out the patterns and sort of stick with it. And in the same way as those games, it was very, very satisfying to like clear those bosses and like unlock like some sort of upgrade, like because you start out just like those games, just kind of walking around, and you maybe have a jump and a dash, and by the end of it, you're able to like double jump and dash, and you have this like grappling hook like ability that they call self pull. And yeah, like it even gets to a point where there are sections later on in the game where it's like, this is not going to be about combat. This is just like platforming and like using your different jumping and movement mechanics to be able to get around from point A to point B.
What is the story? You're like a rock?
You're sort of a rock person. It's a mysterious game to me, and it's such a hidden gem that I feel like not enough people have played it to like do like a lore video on it, but I would really love to watch like either a lore video or like somebody breaking down like the ending of the game and what it all means. But like you basically have like a black hole on as a head, and you're sort of like basically a world eater. And so like the way it handles blocking or parrying is you use the black hole on your head to like absorb enemies basically. And so you have like a sort of a circle that's highlighted in the top left part of the screen. That's how you sort of recharge. So if you've gotten hit or you've taken some damage, you can use that bar to like restore your health. And the way you restore that resource in the top left corner is by absorbing enemies. And as you go, I mean, I don't want to spoil it either, but like you're basically absorbing everything. You're absorbing the world. And so it is interesting from a story perspective. And it like is a little bit like you don't get much of it in the first half of the game, and you like sort of learn a lot more as you go later on.
Is this on Switch?
So it is coming to Switch, and this is why I think it's such a hidden gem. Is it's right now it's only on Steam and Stadia. So when it launched as like a Stadia Pro title last year, and it was only on Steam and Stadia. And they were like, we're gonna do a Switch version, and it's coming, summer 2022. And they've had to delay it. I think maybe they're also adding new content for it, but they've delayed it. I don't know if it's still coming this year. I think maybe they're still targeting this year, but
yeah, Nintendo's website says releasing in summer 2022, which, as far as I'm concerned, is right now.
Yeah, so I don't know if the release is imminent. I think I saw a tweet from the developer where they were like, yeah, we've had to delay it, but there's going to be like new content as well. So like keep an eye out. I will
buy this on Switch. I'm confirming now on the podcast. I'm going to buy this when it comes to Switch.
I love this game so much. It's very, very good. It's a a total hidden gem right now that not enough people are playing and talking about. But
now, you kind of bounced off of Hollow Knight, is that correct?
Yeah, back in the day when I picked it up, like at that time, I didn't really know what like Metroidvanias were at the time. So I only started it and kind of bounced off of it. But yeah.
Are you going to play Silksong when it comes out?
I might actually, because I am much more receptive to that style of game now than I was back when Hollow Knight originally came out. Mm-hmm. So I can see myself picking it up and playing it for sure. So we can definitely like talk about it a lot.
I'm going to want to talk about it.
I know. So the thing with Grime is I was actually hoping that like one of those, you know, like signature edition games or whatever would do like a physical release, or like I Am 8-Bit would do like a physical Switch release for this game. And I was going to pick it up, but they delayed it. So I was like, nah, I'll just play it on Steam Deck. And so that's what I did. And it's great. I don't think it's as long as Hollow Knight. How long did it take you to get through Hollow Knight?
I beat it, so I only played a little bit of the DLC, but my ending percentage was 101%, and I think it took me like maybe 32 hours, 35 hours.
It will not take you that long to get through Grime, which is maybe another bonus. I like a game that's a solid, like, 12 to 15 hours, which is, I think, about how long it took me to get through Grime. And you can, like, backtrack and go back and like, because you'll gain abilities that will allow you to access places you couldn't the first time you went through an area. But you don't necessarily have to do that either if you just want to like, make it a little bit more linear and sort of mainline your way through the game. So it's not like Metroid Dread where it's sort of having you backtrack through previous areas a lot. It can be a little bit more linear if that's how you want to play it, but it's great. It's a very, very good game that I highly recommend, and hopefully it comes out on Switch later this year and more people pick it up and play it. But
I'll create a Google News alert for Grime Switch so I can get it the day it comes out.
You should do that.
Tinykin, you said was like it's like Pikmin style?
It's I mean I assume it is based on the fact that you're picking up a lot of like little men or kin, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I've never played a Pikmin game, so I can't say definitively that you're doing the same things. But it's great. I like the art style of it. I like the sound effects, like running across. Like, so you're basically a person who has been sort of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids down to small size. And you're basically going through these rooms of like a house, it looks like. And so you're in like the bedroom or the bathroom or like a living room. And you're picking up these. So you're interacting with like these different insects, and they're like, it's like a whole village of people or whatever. And they're like, hey, you have the ability to like, go have these Tinykin like follow you. They like you. They'll actually follow you. So you can use them to do these different tasks or whatever. And so it's basically an exploration game where you're like, you'll find these different colored Tinykin, and the different colors indicate that like the green ones can like pick up heavy objects, and the red ones explode, and maybe I'm mixing up the colors, but one of the other colors you can stack on top of each other so you can climb them like a ladder. And so you have all these, they can do different things based on what color of Tinykin they are. And so you use them to get around the world, and like you might have to throw the strong ones that pick up objects. You throw like 10 of them at this object, and they'll pick it up and they'll carry it to a different place for you. And that's how you like solve a thing. But you have to like, be able to find the different Tinykin. And also there's like a hover mechanic where you like jump and hover around, but it's like it's rated based on how many bubbles you have. So like when you jump and hold the button, like a bubble appears around you, and that's how you hover. And so if you have 2 bubbles, obviously you can glide a little bit further than if you only have 1. And so in each area, it looks kind of like gold nuggets that you're collecting, but they call it pollen. And so you're picking those up, and there's like, I don't know, over 1,000 in each area. And so as you pick those up, there's like a certain threshold that once you reach it, you can go turn them into some character there, and he'll give you another bubble so that you can hover longer. And there's always in each area a thing where a guy will be like, hey, I need you to get me this thing. It's all the way over there. You need this many bubbles to be able to hover over there. And so once you do that, you can access this other area, and it's like a little bit of a challenge to get there and complete something. So I don't know. I had a lot of fun with it. It's a pretty short game. Like, it's definitely like a weekend playthrough if you've got like a weekend where you're looking for something to play. Like, it's very addicting to just like explore and collect stuff, and I loved it for that. I didn't want to stop playing it once I started it, and it didn't say it was approved on Steam Deck, but I tried it anyway and had zero issues with it, so it ran perfectly well on Steam Deck. I think it is also on Switch, but double check me on that because I'm not 100% sure, but would be a great, if it performs well on Switch, it would be a great Switch game. Or yeah, you can just, I think it is on Game Pass as well, so that's an option. But very, very good. Liked it quite a bit. And then once I finished that, I was like, all right, so months ago I picked up Shadow Warrior 3 and I never played it. I should just play that and knock it off the list of games for this year that I was planning on playing. And so I did. It's also a pretty short game that you can get through in a weekend if you've got the time for it. And I think I beat it in like 2 sittings.
Oh, wow.
It's not a long game at all. But I think the idea is it's supposed to be one of those games that you would replay over and over again. And so they keep it fairly brief so that you're not intimidated by multiple playthroughs. And there are, like, once you complete it, there's like New Game Plus, or there's like chapter select, so you can go back in and try to find, like, there are in each level there's some like power-ups that you can find. There's like some resource that you find to like level up either your guns, because there's like a handful of guns that you use. It's basically a Doom style arcade shooter is what it is. Yeah. And so you're finding these different orbs that you use to either level up your guns that add new effects to them, or leveling up like an attribute for your main character. And I have not played the previous Shadow Warrior games. I had no idea what was going on. But it was fun to play. I had fun playing it. I will say I think it needed like boss fights somewhere in there, like cool boss fights. There wasn't really any to speak of. They were at least nothing that was like super interesting until I guess maybe the final chapter of it. But they could have done more with that, I thought. But the platforming was fun too, because you also have a grappling hook and you can like wall run. And so they did some fun, interesting stuff with that as well. But yeah, the main character is a little bit like Asian Deadpool, where he's just sort of a merc with a mouth type of a thing. But and wisely, the game, like if you die, it like respawns you really quickly, and it doesn't replay the dialogue, thankfully.
Oh,
because
nice.
it would have gotten very irritating to listen to some of that dialogue more than once. But yeah, no, I thought it was fine. It was not like my favorite game that I've played this year, but it was an enjoyable time if you like that sort of Doom style arcade shooter. Maybe wait for a sale. Get it on a sale since it's such a short game. But it was fun enough to play. And then the other one that I have started that I briefly talked about already was Steelrising, which I'm playing on PS5. And it's so far I would say it's a pretty solid Souls-like experience, but maybe I'll have more thoughts on it once I finish it. What have you been playing or watching?
So I've been doing the opposite of playing, actually. I've been making. Long listeners of this show will know that since the pandemic started happening, I have a weekly role-playing game that I play with my friends online. And the first person to do a campaign did a Dungeons and Dragons campaign that lasted for about a year. And then the second person has been running a Shadowrun game since then for about a little over a year. And that campaign is wrapping up. So now it has fallen to me to do a campaign. And I was looking around. We've been using Roll20 to do our online role playing, and that's fine. But I wanted to kick it up a notch, as Emerald Lagasse would say. That was his thing, right? Kicking it up a notch. But I found Foundry.
Say BAM?
He did say BAM, and I said BAM because I found Foundry VTT, which is a thing that you pay for. Roll20 is free, which is great, but I think it's like $40. You get a license for Foundry, and then you can just have it forever. It's not a subscription, but it's basically a platform where I can build Dungeons and Dragons style games, or I'm using Dungeons and Dragons as the template, and a ton of people have made assets for it and modules. And so I'm going to be running a pre-made campaign. I have that Dragon Heist book that I got forever ago just because I like to read them. But I'm going to be using that to make a game within Foundry. And it's great. It's very fun. If you're using Roll20 right now and you're kind of like, it doesn't have as much features as I want, or I can't get it to do this thing, check out Foundry because it's a lot of money up front. It is like $40 like a regular game up front. But after that, it's completely free, and all of the modules, I would say 99% of the modules are free, and it just upgraded to version 10, so some of the modules aren't working right now, but people are working to make them work in version 10, but man, it's been very fun to build this out. It's almost like old style, like making things in RPG Maker, but slightly less complicated. My recommendation is if you're doing an online role-playing game with your friends, you gotta use Foundry. I know that there was just a big thing about the next version of Dungeons and Dragons. There was that special thing that came out where they were like, was it Dungeons and Dragons 1 or 1 Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, where they're going to have their own VTT, virtual tabletop. That's way in the future. That's happening like 2 years from now, and who knows if it's going to be any good. This is happening right now, and it's great, and I can't say enough good things about Foundry. So definitely check it out, is my recommendation.
Speaking of recommendations, do you have any parting wisdom for us?
I'm gonna roll that into my my parting wisdom today is to check out Foundry VTT. It's great. You'd be very wise to check it out.
Now we talked about it a little bit after we finished recording the last podcast we did, but I've been listening to Cassiopeia.
Yes,
quite a bit lately, and we got to talking about like different sort of like Japanese style music and like Japanese city pop and stuff like that. So listen to Cassiopeia if you haven't. I watched some video like a few weeks ago about somebody like talking about how much they liked Cassiopeia, and they had like discovered them recently, and they're just like this like 80s style
city
from
pop
the
is
80s.
Great.
Yeah, for sure. And they do like jazz fusion stuff. Sounds sort of like video game music, which I like. So, did you end up listening to that? I forget. Piper was who I sent to you.
No, I need to. I completely forgot about that.
It's very good,
but I shall. I'm actually looking for music to put into Foundry VTT, so maybe I'll check it out.
Oh wow, definitely check that out. But this has been a long show. I think that's going to do it for us until next week. Go ahead and follow us at Starside Cafe on your podcast app of choice. I guess Starside Chat would be the thing to search for on your podcast app. But you can follow us at Twitter and Instagram and YouTube at Starside Cafe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.